Hello, welcome back into the workshop. I'm just setting out the architraves for these curved windows. I've been working on and featuring quite a few of the elements of the building of these windows. And we're at the point where we need to mould up and do some curved machining on the spindle moulder. So I've got two of these windows in production. I'm actually going to make the architrave section, the curved part, and the staff bead into a full circle, so a ring of moulding that I can feed through the spindle really nice and evenly. So like anything in the workshop, we start out with a good drawing. I've just checked the window size and I've got my diameter of the inside of the architrave, and I can just map that circle out on my bench here. That circle, we can spring some lines through there. That gives us our segmented cuts. And I'm just want to work out sort of what width piece of timber I've got to cut these sections from. So if I've got 4-inch timber, I'd have to use a straight edge from the point to the point here to somewhere over here, making sure that I can cut that curve out of a single piece of 4-inch timber. And then I can also ascertain the length from that as well. I've got the sections cut on the pieces that are going to make up the moulding, so each piece is covering that curved section, so I know I've got enough timber there to make it up. Then the actual profile I'm going to be cutting is like this, so it looks like that on the end grain of the piece. It's going to follow that curve around. I think I'm going to put a little domino in every joint somewhere around there, give a bit of strength between the pieces, and a little like tongue to strengthen them and join them together. I'm just going to fix the sections that are glued up and put a screw through the board into this bit here where it's not going to get affected by the routering of the product. So I don't want the screw hole to show up in the finish when I moulded it, so that's like the tallest bit of moulding. So with my radius is drawn on there, it's about that far from the edge. I can measure in. It's 25, so just put a few screw holes around at that. In the middle there. that inner cut I've just done about 3mm bigger than it needs to be, so that should be about 47mm. So I've just got to do one more pass with a little trimming cut so that we end up with the right size piece but with a lovely smooth cut around that inside edge. So what I've done here is made a captive jig, so the piece of wood is actually held captive on this upright board, so it cannot move. So I'm just going to wind the fences back into the cutter to the depth of cut, sort of progressively cut my way in small passes. But I'm just using screws there to put a bit of pressure on that bit of wood, and then some above it and below, just to hold it on that arc so it can't move. So as I spin it round, it always follows that true curve around the cut, and then there's no chance of it catching and flying out my hands. Tell you what, look at this. That's beautiful. That is perfection. remember me laminating up the glazing bead, but finally getting to machine that as well. So using the ring fence on this one and working the cut back in stages just to bring that offload moulding. And I'm actually moulding both sides of this one as well. So you can see here I've done the top and the bottom because it's a true curve that I've glued around that former. I can just rip both sides of that down now to the depth of my bead, and I've made my 2 beads, one for each window. Nice to get to this final assembly stage on the windows now. So getting the top sash in and glued in, screwed in place, and that meeting rail, it's actually attached to the top sash, so it's dominoed and glued in, and then also screwed through the side of the window to give that arch some strength across the middle. And then finally get the outside trims on and pinned in place on the outside. Few little jobs left to do, and we're getting ready for the paint stage. So all I've got to do is make the staff bead, the square bits for the bottom to match the curved ones, get them chopped in, and we're pretty much ready. I was going to make some sort of joke about rounding the video off there. I think I'll leave that one for another time. So that's all the components made. I'll just run you through a few of the features and why I've made a couple of the bits the way I have, and why that will make my life easier a bit further down the road when it comes to fitting these windows. But yeah, that's everything sort of as it's going to sit in the opening when it's been fitted. You've got the lining with that single piece of tulip wood all the way around, so when that gets painted, there's no sort of sections or joints that will show up in time. It's going to remain looking really good for its lifetime, really. Got the lovely sill that's a feature of the house. The window boards there have this moulding on all the rest of them, so it's got to stay true with this curved window as well. The sash itself is obviously a mock sash, so you've got the opening sash that's top opening as per the customer's request, and because it's a curved window, it had to open from the square section here, short of the curved top bit pivoted inside, and then you get a bit of a problem with how the draft seals will work at the point at which it pivots. It's a completely different window, and in my opinion not as good, so we decided to split it there and maintain having that sort of sash window meeting rail and the full depth of a sash window, so it looks sort of original and as proper as possible. But you can now leave this window open during the day and not get rain coming into the inside of the house. It's also a little bit better than a sash window in this shape of window because you've got a bigger fire escape option. You've got a huge opening there to actually climb out of for an upstairs window, versus if it's just a sash window, I mean that bottom sash, the meeting where it would probably be in the middle of the window here. It would only move up to the start of the curve, so you'd have about 200mm of exit room. It's just not enough to physically get out of. Together, I made a little fixed rail there that just nips over the staff bead in the corners here, and that's going to provide my perimeter seal for the draft seal around the window. But also that looks like the normal or standard meeting rail of a sash window. If we go around to the outside, these are slightly unusual. They're on little sub sills. So normally a sash window is fitted on some form of stone sill that the water would run down onto, then away from the building. But this is just a completely brick opening, so we've gone with a sub sill that's going to take the water off of that facade of the building. But we've managed to keep, like the other sash window that I made after the video on, this outer section looks like the outer piece of a box sash window. So the actual outside external view of this looks as original as you're going to get for a mock sash window. Top sash rail is identical to a normal sash. Anything that's slightly different is the meeting rail drops a little bit there, but I don't think it really deters from the look of the window. And then the rebate here, I've even added a little quarter round on, so it looks like the parting bead you'd find on a regular sash. And when this is up in the air, the gap there you see is almost like the gap you'd have behind the parting bead anyway, so it just looks dead genuine when it's in place and fitted. And with the hinges, the sash just about tucks under that top sash. I've got to take a tiny bit more off that, because it's still catching a little bit, but it's one of my jobs to do before I finish sanding these windows. And then, like all my other sashes, got a little relief cut there for any water that gets behind and rains on the sill doesn't get trapped behind that rebate there. On the side then, you might be thinking I've made a mistake by having this lip on the outside here, thinking maybe this was too thin. That was actually intentional, so the main body of the window here is thinner than the outside part that you see that will be close to the brickwork, and that gives just a little bit of clearance room so that I can fit the window without having to plane too much material off on site. Hopefully that will remain intact with the paint finish without having to plane anything off it at all. You can see it better at the sill here. This all still needs cleaning up yet. I've got to do all my cleaning up and sanding. But you can see the sill is the right width of window, but then we've got a 5mm step back to the main body that goes inside. And again, the lining is to that smaller dimension as well, so hopefully that will slip in the existing brickwork that's there without too much fuss. If I do need to plane anything to scribe it to any brickwork, it's just hopefully that thin outer strip that I need to work with, which is going to be really easy to knock back on site. I'm going to leave the architrave in a full circle while I paint it. That'll allow me to get a decent finish on it, and it'll also keep the joint, so when I cut this in half, so it's a perfect half to make up the two windows architrave, it'll give me a lovely sharp cut that I can joint straight away on site into the pre-painted architrave. If I do that cut now and then paint it afterwards, every time I denib and sand, I'm at risk of rounding the corners or the ends of that cut, which is going to be my finished cut during that whole process. So I'm potentially going to damage it if I make that cut now. So I'm going to leave that in a full ring while I paint it. Got my glazing beads made up and my glass templates made for the curved one, and the glass is on order. So I'm busy now painting this, getting it ready for the glass to be fitted and all the seals and locks and stuff to go in. And the next time you'll probably see it, so we're actually fitting this on site. I really hope you've enjoyed watching me make these windows over the last couple of videos, and I look forward to hearing your comments and see what you've got to say about the process of making them.